I'm Clara, 32 female. I live alone in a city apartment that I own, a quiet sanctuary filled with books and plants, paid for by a career I built from scratch as a senior data analyst. For most of my life, I was the practical daughter, the one who understood that budgets were tight and celebrations were a luxury. My younger sister, Isabel, was the special one, the exception to every rule, the one for whom budgets were merely suggestions. For years, I accepted this narrative. I watched her blow out candles on elaborate cakes while I got a cupcake from the grocery store. I watched her open mountains of presents while I got a sensible sweater. They told me I was mature for my age, that I understood. The truth is, I just stopped asking for anything because the answer was always a gentle, guilt-laden no. They said my birthday was always at an expensive time of year, a convenient excuse that never seemed to apply to my sister. But this year was different. This year, when they told me they couldn't afford to do anything for my 32nd birthday, I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I just smiled, nodded, and quietly booked a first-class ticket to Tokyo. This story is about the moment I stopped waiting for them to see my value and started showing it to myself, with a view from a penthouse suite that finally made them see what they had lost. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. To understand the silence of my 32nd birthday, you have to hear the echoes of all the ones that came before it. My family wasn't poor. My father, Richard, owned a moderately successful hardware store, the kind of place that always smelled like sawdust and metal, a fixture in our small town. My mother, Helen, was a school administrator before she retired, a woman whose entire life was organized into neat columns and balanced budgets. We were comfortable. We had everything we needed, and some of what we wanted. But the family's emotional and financial resources were allocated with the precision of a corporate accountant, and the balance sheet was always, unequivocally, in my sister Isabel's favor. My 16th birthday is the first one that truly cemented this reality in my mind. I had dreamed of a sweet 16, not a massive, televised spectacle, but a simple party with my friends, maybe a DJ and some pizza in our backyard. For months, I dropped hints, leaving pamphlets for party rental places on the kitchen counter, talking about what my friends were doing for their own birthdays. When I finally got the courage to ask my parents directly, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table, her face a mask of gentle disappointment. "Oh, honey," she'd sighed, stirring her tea. "You know money is a bit tight right now. Your father just had to order new inventory for the store. It's just an expensive time. Besides, you're so mature. You don't need all that fuss, do you?" I remember the sting of those words, the implication that wanting to be celebrated was somehow immature. My 16th birthday party consisted of a sheet cake from the local grocery store and a card from my parents with a crisp $20 bill inside. Isabel, who was 12 at the time, complained that the frosting was too sweet. 2 years later, it was Izzy's 14th birthday. The store's inventory issues had apparently resolved themselves. Our backyard was transformed with a rented marquee, a professional caterer serving miniature hot dogs, and a local DJ my sister had found on social media. She held court in the center of it all, surrounded by a giggling sea of friends, opening presents that were lavish and numerous. My parents beamed from the sidelines, their faces glowing with pride. When I caught my mother's eye, she gave me a small, almost apologetic smile, as if to say, "You understand, it's Izzy." And that was the unspoken rule in our house. Clara understands, so Izzy can have. My 18th birthday was marked by a quiet dinner at a chain restaurant where my father spent most of the meal talking about the rising cost of property taxes. My gift was a set of sensible luggage for college. "You'll need this," my dad said, patting the side of the beige suitcase. "It's practical." That was my brand. I was Clara, the practical one. I went off to college on a partial scholarship, working 2 jobs to cover the rest, and majored in statistics, because it was a practical degree that led to a stable career. Meanwhile, Izzy's 18th birthday, 2 years later, was a weekend trip to a beach resort with 5 of her closest friends, all expenses paid by my parents. They said she'd had a stressful senior year and deserved a break. She was pursuing a degree in communications, something she described as being for people. The pattern became more entrenched with every passing year. 4. My 21st birthday, I received a well-meaning but uninspired gift basket of artisanal cheeses and crackers, sent to my college dorm. For Izzy's 21st, my parents flew to her university town and threw her a massive party at a rented bar, complete with custom cocktails named after her. They posted 100 photos online, their arms around my glowing, tipsy sister, with captions full of hashtags like proud parents and best daughter. I saw the pictures while sitting in my dorm's library, studying for a midterm exam. I remember closing my laptop and just staring at the wall, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the effort, the thought, the public declaration of value. My 30th birthday should have been a milestone. I had just received a major promotion at work. I had paid off my student loans. I was, by all measures, a successful adult. I hoped, foolishly, that this would be the year they finally saw me. A week before the day, my mother called. "Clara, honey, about your birthday," she began, and I braced myself. "We were thinking, since you're so busy with your new job and all, we'll just do something low-key. Maybe we can all have a nice phone call." A phone call. For my 30th birthday, I didn't even argue. I just said, "That's fine, Mom." On the day itself, they sent a group text. "Happy 30th, love you." That was it. Later that month, Izzy, who was 26, decided she wanted to host a belated birthday brunch for me. It was a nice gesture, I thought, until I arrived and realized it was more of an opportunity for her to network with her friends, most of whom were aspiring influencers. She handed me a mimosa and promptly forgot about me. The bill for the brunch, of course, was quietly paid by my parents. These weren't isolated incidents. They were data points in a long, consistent trend. I was the reliable, low-maintenance infrastructure of the family, and Izzy was the glittering, high-cost special project that required constant funding and attention. For years, I told myself it was because I was stronger, more independent. I didn't need the fuss. But as I got older, I realized that was a lie I told myself to numb the ache of being consistently overlooked. The truth was, being the practical one, the mature one, was a lonely and thankless job. It meant my needs were always secondary, my milestones were footnotes, and my heartaches were my own to manage. And as my 32nd birthday approached, I could already hear the familiar excuses warming up, the gentle dismissals being drafted. I just didn't know that this time, the echo would be so loud it would finally shatter my silence. The beginning of the end started, as it often did, with a family video call. It was a Sunday evening in late August, about 6 weeks before my birthday in early October. I clicked the link and my parents' faces popped up, beaming from their cozy living room. A moment later, Izzy's face appeared in a third box, perfectly lit and framed, a skill she'd perfected as a part-time social media influencer. She was in her trendy apartment, which my parents co-signed for and helped furnish. "Hi, everyone," she chirped, her voice bubbling with an excitement that immediately put me on high alert. My family's joy was usually a leading indicator of an upcoming expense related to Isabel. "We have the most wonderful news," my mother announced, clapping her hands together. My father, sitting beside her, nodded enthusiastically, a proud smile stretching across his face. "Izzy, darling, you tell her." Izzy leaned into her camera, her eyes wide with manufactured drama. "So, you know my 28th birthday is coming up in November," she began. I nodded mutely. Of course, I knew. The planning for an Isabel birthday event, or IBE as I'd privately nicknamed them, usually began months in advance. "Well, Mom and Dad are helping me throw a little party, and it's going to be epic." What followed was a 20-minute monologue detailing the little party. It was not little. It was a full-blown production. They had decided to rent out a popular local art gallery for the evening. There would be a caterer specializing in artisanal tapas. They were hiring a mixologist to create a signature cocktail called the Izzatini. And the piece de resistance, the detail that made my stomach clench into a tight, cold knot, a live band. Not a DJ, not a friend with a guitar, but a professional 4-piece jazz-funk band that Izzy had seen at a wine festival and become obsessed with. Can you believe it, Clara? My mother gushed, her face glowing. A real band, it's going to be so sophisticated, just like our Izzy. I tried to keep my expression neutral, a skill I'd honed over a lifetime of such conversations. I knew what this meant. A gallery rental, catering, a mixologist, and a live band. We were talking about a 5-figure price tag. Easily. This wasn't a party, it was a coronation. I thought about my birthday, just around the corner. I could already feel it being preemptively erased to make budgetary room for Izzy's extravaganza. Wow, I said, the word feeling dry and inadequate. That sounds very elaborate for a 28th birthday. The mood on the call shifted instantly. My mother's smile tightened. It's a celebration of our daughter, she said, her tone defensive. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make her feel special. She works so hard with her influencing and her event planning side gigs. Izzy pouted dramatically. I just want it to be a memorable night with my friends and family. Is that so wrong? It's also great for my brand. I'm going to get so much content. Of course not, honey, my father soothed. You deserve it. He then turned his attention to me, his expression shifting to one of mild paternal concern. Clara, we were actually meaning to talk to you about your birthday. I braced myself, here it comes. Now we know it's coming up soon, he started, clearing his throat. And with everything we're putting into Izzy's party, well, you know how it is. Things are going to be a little tight for the next few months. It's just a really expensive time of year, honey, my mother chimed in, trotting out her favorite, time-honored excuse. Your birthday is right at the start of the fourth quarter. It's always a difficult time for your father's business. It was the same script they had used for 20 years. The words were so familiar I could have recited them myself. My promotion, my financial independence, my turning 32, none of it mattered. In their eyes, I was still the practical daughter who didn't need a fuss, and my birthday was an inconvenient expense to be minimized. The fact that Izzy's much more extravagant party was being planned for November, even deeper into this supposedly expensive time of year, was a piece of logical dissonance they were completely blind to. So, what we were thinking, my mother continued, her voice bright and cheerful, as if she were offering me a wonderful prize, is that for your birthday, we could all just come to your city for a nice, simple dinner. Our treat, of course. We can go to that little Italian place you like. The rage that flashed through me was hot and swift, but I smothered it before it could reach my face. A simple dinner. That was their grand gesture. A meal that would probably cost them $200, if that. It was a breadcrumb, offered to keep me quiet while they prepared a 7-course banquet for my sister. And the worst part? They genuinely thought it was a generous offer. They had so fully absorbed the narrative of Clara, the practical, that they couldn't see the gross inequity of their own actions. I looked at their expectant faces on the screen. My mother, so sure of my understanding. My father, so confident in my maturity. My sister, so blissfully unaware of her own privilege. And in that moment, something inside me didn't just crack, it turned to dust. The part of me that had always hoped, that had always held out for a sliver of recognition, simply vanished. You know what? I said, my voice eerily calm. Don't worry about it. I think I'm going to be busy with work around my birthday anyway. We don't have to do anything. Relief washed over their faces. It was so palpable I could almost feel it through the screen. Oh, well, if you're sure, honey, my mother said, barely hiding her delight. We can always celebrate later, a belated thing. Exactly, my father added. We'll make it up to you. But I knew they wouldn't. The belated thing would never materialize. It would be forgotten in the whirlwind of planning Izzy's party. My 32nd birthday would pass, as so many had before, marked only by a perfunctory text message. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. They had just given me the most incredible gift, and they didn't even realize it. They had released me from any obligation to care about their feelings or their flimsy excuses. They had officially made my birthday my own, and I was going to celebrate it. Oh, was I ever going to celebrate it? A few weeks after the video call that had redrawn the map of my emotional world, I found myself back at my parents' house. It was a Saturday, and my father had called in a favor. His inventory management software at the hardware store was, in his words, on the fritz, and he'd asked if I, his tech-savvy daughter, could come take a look. It was a classic Clara task, practical, unpaid, and designed to make their lives easier. Normally, I would have done it with a quiet sigh of resignation. This time, however, I approached it with a strange sense of detachment, like an anthropologist observing the customs of a familiar but distant tribe. I spent 2 hours in the dusty back office of the store, cleaning up corrupted files and streamlining my dad's database. He was grateful, clapping me on the shoulder and calling me his genius girl. The praise felt hollow, a token payment for services rendered. Afterwards, he insisted I come back to the house for dinner. My mom was making her famous lasagna, a dish usually reserved for special occasions or for soothing Izzy after a minor life crisis. I agreed, mostly out of a morbid curiosity to see the family dynamic through my new, disillusioned eyes. The house was buzzing with energy for Izzy's party. My mother was on the phone with the caterer, discussing the pros and cons of goat cheese versus brie for the tartlets. A pile of fabric swatches for tablecloths lay on the dining room table. It was campaign headquarters for Operation Make Izzy Feel Special. I retreated to the kitchen to get a glass of water, wanting to escape the fray. The kitchen counter was cluttered with mail, catalogs, and flyers, the usual domestic debris. As I reached for a glass, my eyes caught on a piece of official-looking paper peeking out from under a Pottery Barn catalog. It was a bank statement. Normally, I would have averted my eyes. My parents' finances were their business, but my newfound detachment had sharpened my senses. The names on the statement were listed at the top: Richard, Helen, and Isabel. My name was conspicuously absent. It was a joint savings account. My curiosity, now fully piqued, got the better of me. I glanced over my shoulder. My mother was still engrossed in her catering call. My father was watching TV in the living room. I carefully slid the statement out from the pile. The account name was Isabel's Future Fund. I felt the air leave my lungs in a slow, painful rush. My hands started to tremble slightly as I scanned the page. The current balance was just over $5,000, but it wasn't the balance that made my blood run cold. It was the transaction history. I saw a series of large withdrawals over the last month, totaling nearly $15,000. The descriptions were vague: POS withdrawal, online transfer, but the timing lined up perfectly with the deposits required for the art gallery, the caterer, and the band. This was the party fund. But the real gut punch, the blow that felt physical, was in the deposit history. I scanned back through the pages, my data analyst brain automatically searching for patterns, and I found one. A deposit of $500 made in early October of the previous year, a few days after my 31st birthday. Another deposit, this one for $1,000, made in October 3 years prior, the week of my 29th birthday. Another and another, going back years. They weren't huge amounts, but they were consistent. Every year, around my birthday, when they were telling me that money was tight and that it was an expensive time, they were taking the money they might have spent on a modest celebration for me and depositing it directly into an account for my sister. It was so much worse than simple neglect. This wasn't just them forgetting me or prioritizing Izzy in the moment. This was a calculated, long-term financial strategy. They were actively defunding my celebrations to overfund hers. The practical daughter wasn't just an emotional role, it was a financial one. My practicality, my understanding, my willingness to ask for nothing, it was literally financing my sister's extravagant lifestyle. The $20 bill in a card, the dinner at a chain restaurant, the group text message, it all took on a new, sinister light. They weren't just cheap gestures, they were savings. Every dollar not spent on me was a dollar invested in her. I felt a wave of nausea. I carefully slid the statement back under the catalog, my movements stiff and robotic. I walked to the kitchen sink, gripped the edge, and took a deep breath, staring out the window at the manicured lawn. The lawn Izzy used to have catered birthday parties on. Everything I was looking at, every comfortable trapping of my childhood home, suddenly felt like part of a crime scene. I had been living in a curated reality, a story written by my parents where I was the sensible supporting character. And this bank statement was the secret chapter that explained the whole plot. "Clara, honey, is everything all right?" My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. She had finished her call and was now standing by the counter, eyeing me with concern. I straightened up, forcing a neutral expression onto my face. "Everything's fine, Mom," I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. "Just thinking about a project for work." She smiled, satisfied with the answer. Of course she was. Clara was always thinking about work. Practical, responsible Clara. "Well, don't stress yourself out too much. Lasagna will be ready in about 20 minutes. Why don't you go chat with your father?" I nodded and walked out of the kitchen, feeling like a spy in my own family. As I sat in the living room, pretending to watch a golf tournament with my dad, the numbers from the statement scrolled through my mind like a T. Seek her tape of betrayal. Isabel's future fund. It was all there in black and white. It wasn't just that they loved her more, it was that they had quantified that love, assigned it a dollar value, and invested it in an interest-bearing account from which I was permanently excluded. The misplaced statement hadn't just revealed a secret, it had given me a data set. And as a data analyst, I knew exactly what to do with it. I was going to follow the numbers, and they were going to lead me to the truth. Returning to my apartment that night, the lasagna felt like a lead weight in my stomach. The image of the bank statement was burned into my mind. Isabel's future fund. The name itself was a declaration. My future, presumably, was my own problem to solve. Hers was a family project. The anger I felt was cold and sharp, a stark contrast to the hot, fleeting flashes of frustration I'd felt in the past. This was different. This was a betrayal I could measure, quantify, and analyze. And that is exactly what I intended to do. I am a data analyst. I spend my days sifting through massive, chaotic datasets, looking for patterns, trends, and anomalies. I find the signal in the noise. I build narratives from numbers. My parents had inadvertently handed me the dataset of my own life, and I was going to apply the full force of my professional skills to understanding it. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. This was about validation. It was about proving, in undeniable empirical terms, that what I had felt my entire life was not an oversensitive misinterpretation of reality. It was fact. I opened my laptop and created a new, password-protected folder on my secure personal drive. I named it Project Phoenix, because I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was going to rise from the ashes of this discovery. Inside, I started a new spreadsheet. The first tab was labeled Financial Discrepancy Analysis. My methods were meticulous and strictly legal. I had no desire to hack into their accounts or do anything that would put me in a compromising position. I didn't need to. I had years of memories, a treasure trove of digital evidence on social media, and a deep understanding of my family's financial habits. I started with what I knew for a fact from the bank statement: the pattern of deposits into Izzy's fund around my birthday. I created columns: my birthday year, my age, my celebration, estimated cost to parents, and corresponding deposit to Izzy's fund. The celebration column was bleakly comical to fill out. Grocery store cake cost $15, dinner at Olive Garden cost $80, group text message cost $0. The deposits to Izzy's fund were anywhere from $500 to $1,500. The correlation was undeniable. Next, I moved on to Izzy's celebrations. I opened up my mother's and Izzy's social media profiles, scrolling back years. They were prolific posters, meticulously documenting every party, every vacation, every extravagant gift. It was all there, a public archive of their favoritism. I started logging the data points. Izzy's 16th birthday, the theme was Hollywood glamour. I found photos of the professional photo booth, the custom-designed cake, the designer dress she wore. I did some research, getting quotes from local vendors for similar services. Estimated cost, $4,000. Izzy's high school graduation, a trip to Cancun for her and a friend. I looked up flight and all-inclusive resort prices for that time of year. Estimated cost, $3,500. Izzy's 21st birthday, the rented-out bar. I found the bar's website. They had an event package page. Based on the number of people in the photos, I could make a very accurate cost estimate. Estimated cost, $5,000. Izzy's college graduation, a brand new car, a compact sedan but new nonetheless. I looked up the MSRP for that year's model. Estimated cost, $22,000. I went on and on, through designer handbags for Christmas, music festival tickets for fun, and checks to cover her rent when her influencing gigs were slow. I was conservative with my estimates, always choosing the lower end of the probable cost. For each major expense, I noted my own corresponding life event and what, if anything, I had received. My college graduation gift was a framed print of my university's campus that cost $150. When I bought my own first car, a reliable 5-year-old Honda, my father gave me a lecture on the importance of regular oil changes and a gift certificate for a free one at his friend's garage. The spreadsheet grew into a damning document. It was a methodical, color-coded, and footnoted testament to 2 decades of inequality. The final tab was a summary dashboard with charts and graphs. One bar chart compared the total estimated parental expenditure on each daughter since the age of 16. The difference was staggering. My bar was a tiny, sad little sliver on the chart, representing a few $1,000s in total. Izzy's was a towering skyscraper, soaring past the $100,000 mark. Seeing it all laid out like that in the cold, impartial language of data was strangely calming. It stripped away all the emotional baggage, all the years of self-doubt and guilt. It was no longer about feelings, it was about numbers. The numbers didn't lie. The data was clear. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. The excuses of tight budgets and expensive times of the year were not just lies, they were insulting, statistically impossible lies. I worked on my project for a week, spending a few hours on it each night after work. It felt empowering, like I was taking back control of my own story. I was no longer the passive recipient of their neglect. I was the analyst, the investigator, the one who held the truth. The file became my secret source of strength. Whenever I felt a pang of old hurt or a flicker of doubt, I would open the spreadsheet. The graphs, the charts, the raw numbers, they were my armor. By the end of the week, my analysis was complete. I had a comprehensive report on the systemic bias within my own family. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Showing it to them felt pointless. They would deny it, call me crazy, or worse, tell me I was ungrateful and materialistic for even thinking in these terms. The report wasn't for them. It was for me. It was the closing argument in a trial I had been secretly holding in my own head for years, and the verdict was in. I was not the problem. My feelings were valid, and I was done. I was done understanding. I was done being practical. I closed the file, took a deep breath, and opened a new browser window. It was time to start planning my own celebration. A celebration that would be, by my family's standards, unforgivably expensive. With the data from Project Phoenix serving as my closing argument, I felt a profound shift within myself. The lingering sense of obligation, the deeply ingrained habit of seeking their approval, had evaporated. I was left with a clean slate, an empty ledger waiting for a new entry. And that entry was going to be an experience so unapologetically self-indulgent that it would retroactively balance the books on 2 decades of neglect. My objective was clear. I would give myself the birthday celebration they never would. I opened a new folder on my laptop, but this one wasn't for analysis. This one was for action. I named it Project Tokyo. Why Tokyo? Because it was the furthest thing I could imagine from my small, predictable life. It was a place of vibrant chaos and serene beauty, of ancient tradition and futuristic technology. It represented everything I now craved: adventure, independence, and a complete break from the familiar. It was also, crucially, very expensive, and the symbolism of that was not lost on me. They had always used expense as an excuse to deny me. I was going to turn it into my reason to celebrate myself. My first step was financial. As a data analyst for a major tech firm, I made a very comfortable living. I had always been a diligent saver, a habit drilled into me by my practical upbringing. I had a healthy emergency fund, a robust retirement account, and a separate savings account for general goals like travel and home improvements. I opened that account and saw a balance that made me smile. It was more than enough. I renamed the account from General Savings to the Clara Celebration Fund. It was a small, symbolic act, but it felt monumental. Next came the planning, and I approached it with the same meticulous detail I had used for my spreadsheet. This was my area of expertise. I didn't just want a vacation, I wanted a perfectly optimized experience. I spent my evenings diving into travel blogs, airline loyalty program forums, and hotel review sites. I learned the art of travel hacking, figuring out how to leverage my credit card points to get the maximum value. The flight was my first target. I was determined to fly first class. It was the ultimate symbol of the luxury I had been denied. It wasn't just about a bigger seat, it was about the message. It was about being treated as valuable from the moment I arrived at the airport. I found a phenomenal deal using a combination of points and cash on a top-tier airline, securing a round-trip ticket in a private suite for a fraction of its retail price. The confirmation email arrived in my inbox, and I stared at the words. First class. Seat 1A, I felt a thrill that was almost dizzying. Then came the accommodation. I didn't want a standard hotel room. I wanted a view. I wanted to wake up and see the sprawling metropolis of Tokyo laid out before me, a tangible representation of how far I had come. I researched for days, cross-referencing locations, amenities, and most importantly, the view from the room. I finally found it, the penthouse suite at a boutique hotel in Shinjuku, known for its floor-to-ceiling windows and panoramic cityscapes. It was an extravagant splurge, but I didn't hesitate. I clicked Book Now, typing in my credit card details with a steady hand. This was not an irresponsible purchase. This was an investment in my own happiness, a correction for years of market imbalance. With the two biggest pieces in place, I began crafting my itinerary. This trip was not about hitting every tourist spot. It was about pure, unadulterated joy, tailored specifically to me. I booked a private sushi-making class with a master chef. I bought a ticket to the Ghibli Museum, a place of wonder and artistry I had dreamed of visiting since I was a teenager. I scheduled a day trip to Hakone to see Mount Fuji and relax in a traditional onsen. I made reservations at 3 different Michelin-starred restaurants, one for each night I would be there, including my birthday itself. Each booking was a small act of rebellion, a declaration that my tastes, my interests, and my pleasure were not just valid, but paramount. Throughout this entire process, which took about 2 weeks, I maintained a perfect facade with my family. I answered their calls, responded to their texts about Izzy's party planning, and listened patiently as my mother agonized over the color of the cocktail napkins. They had no idea that while they were debating floral arrangements, I was confirming my reservation for an 8-course kaiseki dinner. The secrecy was empowering. It was my delicious, private revolution. A week before my departure date, which was the day before my birthday, my mother called. "Clara, honey," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I feel just awful that we're not doing anything for your birthday this year. Are you sure you don't mind?" I leaned back in my office chair, looking at my second monitor where the confirmation for my penthouse suite was displayed. I smiled. "Honestly, Mom, don't even worry about it," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. "It's completely fine. I'm just going to have a quiet one at home." "Oh, good," she said, the relief in her voice as clear as day. "You're always so understanding. Anyway, I have to run. The band just sent over their set list for Izzy's party and I have to approve it. Talk soon." She hung up. I looked at my packed suitcase sitting by my front door. A quiet one at home. Yes, I thought. A quiet one in my own private suite, 36 floors above the largest city in the world. It was going to be the quietest, most peaceful, and most satisfying birthday of my entire life. The day of my departure arrived, a crisp Tuesday at the end of September. My phone buzzed with a text from my dad. "Don't forget to check the air in your tires. Getting cold." It was his standard, practical advice, a reflection of how he saw me, as a machine that needed routine maintenance. I replied, "Will do," as I loaded my single, perfectly packed suitcase into the trunk of a black car service I'd hired to take me to the airport. The contrast was a secret joy. Checking in was a dream. There was no line, just a serene, carpeted area where an attendant greeted me by name. She walked me through a private security line and into the first-class lounge. The lounge was an oasis of calm, with plush armchairs, hushed conversations, and a bar serving top-shelf champagne. I ordered a glass, sank into a chair overlooking the tarmac, and felt the last vestiges of my old life begin to slip away. For years, I had made myself small to make them comfortable. Here, in this space of unapologetic luxury, I was given permission to take up space, to have my needs not just met, but anticipated. The flight itself was surreal. The seat was a private suite with a closing door. The flight attendant offered me pajamas and a glass of Krug champagne before we even took off. As the plane ascended, leaving my city behind, I felt a profound sense of lightness. I wasn't running away from my family, I was flying towards myself. I ate a multi-course meal prepared by a celebrity chef, watched 2 movies on a massive screen, and then curled up under a duvet on a lie-flat bed. I slept for 6 hours, a deep, dreamless sleep, and woke up as we began our descent into Tokyo. Navigating Narita Airport was easy, and soon I was in a taxi, watching the landscape of Tokyo rush past my window. The sheer scale of the city was breathtaking. It was a world away from the small town I grew up in, a place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Here, I was anonymous, and that anonymity was liberating. The hotel was even more spectacular than the pictures had suggested. The lobby was on the 30th floor, offering a stunning view of the city. At the front desk, the concierge greeted me with a polite bow. "Welcome, Ms. Clara. We have your penthouse suite ready for you. We understand it is your birthday tomorrow, so we have taken the liberty of arranging a small welcome gift for you." My suite was breathtaking. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the glittering expanse of Shinjuku. The cityscape was a living, breathing entity, a riv. Of light and energy. On a low table in the center of the room sat a bottle of exquisite champagne on ice and a delicate cake with a single, elegant candle. A handwritten card beside it read, "Wishing you a wonderful birthday and a delightful stay." The management. I felt a lump form in my throat. A group of complete strangers, 1,000 miles from my home, had shown me more thoughtfulness and consideration than my own family had in years. I spent the rest of the day in a state of blissful solitude. I unpacked, took a long bath in the enormous soaking tub overlooking the city, and then, wrapped in a plush robe, simply sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The next morning, it was my 32nd birthday. I woke up to the gentle light of dawn filtering through the window. My phone had a few notifications. A group text from my family at 7:00 a.m. "Happy birthday, Clara. Hope you have a great day." Another from Izzy. "HBD. Can't talk, so swamped with party stuff, it's insane." That was it. No calls, no further questions. They had fulfilled their minimal obligation and moved on. The old me would have felt a familiar pang of disappointment. The new me simply smiled. Their perfunctory messages were the final confirmation that I had done the right thing. I spent the day following my perfect itinerary. I visited a serene garden, got lost in a wonderful bookstore, and had a lunch of the most perfect ramen I had ever tasted. I was completely on my own schedule, guided only by my own desires. As evening approached, I returned to my suite. I put on a simple but elegant black dress I had bought for the occasion. The city outside was now a dazzling tapestry of neon and headlights. I opened the bottle of champagne the hotel had given me, poured a glass, and walked over to the immense window. I looked down at the vibrant, teeming city, then at my reflection in the glass, a woman who looked calm, happy, and free. It was time. I took out my phone and composed a new post for my social media. I chose a picture I had just taken, my hand holding the fluted glass of champagne, perfectly in focus, with the magnificent, sprawling Tokyo skyline artfully blurred in the background. The caption I wrote was simple, polite, and utterly devastating. For years, I was told my birthday was an expensive time of year and not worth a real celebration. Decided my 32nd was the year I finally agreed. It is expensive, and I am worth it. Cheers from Tokyo. I added a few hashtags. Sala birthday trip, treat yourself, penthouse view. I read the caption one last time, a small, satisfied smile playing on my lips. Then I hit post. And for the final, perfect touch, I put my phone on airplane mode, set it aside, and dedicated my full attention to the incredible view. The storm would be coming, I knew. But for tonight, the only sound would be the gentle fizz of my champagne and the quiet hum of the city below. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of digital silence, and it was glorious. My birthday dinner at the Michelin-starred restaurant was a sublime experience, a 2-hour ballet of exquisite flavors and artistry. Each course was a masterpiece, and I savored every moment, entirely present and unburdened by the drama I knew was brewing a world away. I wandered through the electric streets of Shinjuku that night, feeling the energy of the city, and it felt like my own energy had been renewed. I was no longer a supporting character in someone else's story. I was the protagonist of my own. The next day, after a leisurely morning and a visit to the art museum, I decided it was time. I sat down in a quiet cafe, ordered a matcha latte, took a deep, centering breath, and switched my phone off airplane mode. The deluge was instantaneous. The screen lit up with a tidal wave of notifications. 47 missed calls, 20 from my mother, 15 from my father, and 12 from Izzy, over 80 text messages, a flood of notifications from my social media post. My heart hammered against my ribs, a conditioned response from a lifetime of conflict avoidance. But then I took a sip of my latte and felt the calm return. I was no longer that person. I was an observer now. I started with the texts. They were a perfect chronicle of their descent into panic and rage. The first few were from friends and extended family, wishing me well, expressing surprise and admiration for my trip. OMG, Tokyo, so jealous. Good for you, Clara. Then came my family's messages. The progression was a case study in narcissistic injury. Izzy, 1 hour after post, Tokyo. What are you doing in Tokyo? Mom, 1 hour, 5 minutes after post. Clara, your sister just sent me your post. What is the meaning of this? Call me immediately. Dad, 1 hour, 15 minutes after post. Clara, this isn't funny. Where did you get the money for a trip like that? The tone then shifted from confusion to accusation. Izzy, 2 hours after post. C. Riousley, a penthouse. Are you trying to make us look bad? You know how stressed I am with my party, and you pull a stunt like this. This is so selfish. Mom, 3 hours after post. I am incredibly disappointed in you, Clara. To be so extravagant and then to brag about it online, after we told you money was tight. What must people think? You've embarrassed us. And finally, it devolved into full-blown hysterics and manipulation. Dad, 5 hours after post. Your mother is a wreck. You need to call us right now. This is completely irresponsible. First class. Do you have any idea how much that costs? You should be saving for a house, not wasting money on showing off. Izzy, last night, 1 her time. You've completely ruined my birthday week. Everyone is talking about your trip instead of my party. I can't believe you would do this to me. After everything Mom and Dad have done for you, you are the most ungrateful person I have ever known. The voicemails were even more unhinged. My mother's voice was strained with tears of fury, accusing me of being secretive and spiteful. My father's was booming with righteous indignation, lecturing me on financial prudence. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Izzy's was a tearful, whining mess, a masterclass in victimhood. I listened to it all, my expression unreadable. I felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, no sadness. It was like watching a documentary about a dysfunctional family and thinking, wow, those people are a mess. The data I had collected on my spreadsheet had predicted this outcome perfectly. Any action that diverted resources or attention from Isabel would be met with swift and disproportionate retaliation. Their reactions weren't about me or my trip. They were about a system of control being disrupted. I had stepped out of my assigned role, and it had broken their entire worldview. The final text from my mother, sent just an hour ago, was the one that sealed it. Mom, we are your family. We love you. But this behavior is unacceptable. You owe us an explanation and an apology. You especially owe your sister an apology for trying to steal her spotlight. An apology. They wanted me to apologize. I finished my latte, the calm within me solidifying into a cool, unbreakable resolve. I opened up our family group chat, the one they had used to send me my pathetic birthday message. I typed out a single, final reply. I read it over once, ensuring every word was precise, calm, and irrefutable. There will be no apology, I wrote. For years, I accepted the narrative that my needs were an inconvenient expense. I recently discovered this was more literal than I ever imagined, thanks to the Isabel's Future Fund savings account statement I saw on your counter. I saw the deposits made on my birthday and the withdrawals for her parties. My trip to Tokyo was paid for entirely by me, with the money I earned at the job I got with the education I paid for myself. It cost less than the car you bought Izzy for graduation. This trip wasn't about embarrassing you, it was about celebrating myself, a concept that is foreign when it comes to me. The fact that my quiet, solo celebration is seen as stealing her spotlight is the entire problem in a nutshell. I am not ungrateful, I am finally undeceived. Please do not contact me again. I need some space. I hit send. Then one by one I blocked their numbers. Helen, Richard, Isabel, I didn't stop there. I went to my social media and blocked them too. I scrubbed my life clean of their immediate reach. It felt like hitting a massive reset button. The sound it made was silence. A beautiful, peaceful, and long overdue silence. I paid for my latte and walked out of the cafe into the bustling Tokyo afternoon. A weight I hadn't even fully realized I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. The bridges were burned. The sound of their collapse was echoing thousands of miles away. But here, all I could hear was the sound of my own footsteps walking forward into a future of my own making. And for the first time, it felt like my future was truly mine.